Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to another episode of the Sweet Nothings podcast. If you're new here or if it's been a while, this is your home of relaxed, funny, and informative chats all about the love of eating. We'll talk about the latest food trends, controversial opinions, and all things edible. My name is Kelly, and I'm here to happily whisper said sweet nothings in your ear for the next 25 to 40 minutes, depending on how patient I am today. Today, I want to talk to you about comfort food. I honestly thought I'd made an episode on this before, but it turns out I actually haven't. So that's what I want to have a chat about today. But beforehand, we need to get into this month's food trends and a couple of the new things that have been appearing in and around the food world, the food industry, before getting into what is comfort food. What are your favorite comfort foods? What are my favorite comfort foods and why? But before getting into anything else, I feel like in terms of the food trends this month cannot be spoken about without touching upon girl dinner. If you are on TikTok or even, I guess at this point, on Reels or on YouTube Shorts, anything like that, girl dinner has been something that has just been absolutely taking over any kind of food content. The idea basically being women between kind of 18 and 35, I think, posting the very kind of sorry excuses for meals that some of us create when we're eating on our own. And I'm talking anything from cheese and crackers with red wine to um, a can of Diet Coke to just various pieces of kind of charcuterie placed on a plate as an individual serving to just plain pasta with butter and cheese, whatever it is, just something that is so kind of satisfying but looks somewhat sad from an external perspective. And of course, some of these have strayed into examples of undereating, which is not good, or some not eating at all, just, alcohol instead, which we've all had a meal like that at some point in our lives, I imagine, but it is not recommended. But I very much enjoyed the kind of trending little song thing that goes along with it and some of the more relatable examples of girl dinner. And of course, it's spread to Instagram and things like that, and has probably had a lot of us kind of facing up to the reality of the sad and really low effort meals that we prepare for ourselves, which we wouldn't do for other people, I think is the whole point. And of course, it would be impossible not to talk about food trends or trends in anything to do with media and publicity over the last month without speaking about Barbie, specifically Barbie related foods, thanks to the Barbie movie absolutely blowing up. And most notably, from what I've seen, Barbie themed pasta. Now, gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous to look at. Essentially, people have been making very, very hot pink, or specifically, the Mattel trademarked Barbie pink pasta, or sauces for pasta at least. Mostly, from what I can discern, made from beetroot with either cream or like feta or something blended in to make this really, really vibrant but creamy pasta sauce along to go with it. And I'm not going to lie, some of them have looked really good. Like, obviously, the amount of publicity and marketing and everything that this film has managed should probably be studied for decades, because I've never seen anything like it. Even Marvel haven't really been able to hype anything up as much as this Barbie movie has. And it's a good movie. I did go and see it. But even food TikTok has been touched by the pink hand of this movie, which I've just found really, really entertaining this month. I also saw, and I don't actually know how much of a trend this is, I've also seen some people doing what they're calling the McDonald's cone sundae, in which they had like a big like a plastic lunchbox or a plastic kind of container, some kind of food container, and they would buy like 5 or 6 of the like McDonald's soft serve ice cream cones. I don't even know if you can get those in the UK these days, but definitely in the US. And they've essentially been inverting these cones into a plastic container, smashing, with the ice cream and the cone itself, smashing it all to pieces and adding like other extra bits in, as if you were making one giant McFlurry. I don't really understand the point of it. I mean, perhaps the McDonald's soft serve had a really specific flavor that people wanted to get from this and make their own sundae with it. But it seems like the kind of thing you could have just done with regular, much more affordable and probably better tasting vanilla ice cream. Maybe it's a texture thing, maybe it's a nostalgia thing, maybe it's just, you know, viral food content bait. I don't know. But, and again, I don't even know if this has been a full trend. I just saw a couple of videos, but it's been happening. Someone out there has been doing it. Otherwise, in terms of some new things popping up in food news this month, Mr. Beast, YouTuber extraordinaire, speaking of, marketing and publicity to the max with the Barbie movie, Signore Beast has launched some chocolate bars. I'm going to be honest, I don't think from the packaging they look particularly enticing. Much like the kind of prime drinks, thanks to Logan Paul and KSI, I'm sure these will be very popular. If I see one, I'll probably pick one up and try it. But the packaging to me looks like something from like one of um the dairy free or the vegan chocolate brands that you would see in like Holland and Barrett or like health food stores. Like it looks like the kind of free from chocolate bars you would see tucked away in a very particular shelf. I don't know if it's the coloring with the packaging. I don't know if it's just because, why is Mr. Beast making chocolate? I have no idea. But it's out there. I think there's 2 to 4 different flavors, different kinds. So be interesting to see how it does if it continues. Similarly, Skittles, I believe and hope that only in the US have released a limited edition mustard flavor. I have quite literally no comments. And also have been seeing from some specifically UK Instagram foodie people that some of the big UK Asda stores have already in August begun stocking Christmas food available for purchase already. Not just high up on the shelves in their packaging, but actually creeping its way onto shelves. The summer isn't over. Halloween is but a distant thought at the moment, let alone Christmas. But hey, it's happening. But that is about it. Nothing particularly disturbing outside of the mustard Skittles. Some fun things, some interesting foodie trends, and some new products coming out. As it's the summer, again, it's always going to be a bit slower because we're not in kind of max food marketing time of year like we will be as we get into the autumn and winter, but definitely some more interesting things than last month. But let's talk about today's topic. Let's talk about what we call, or what most of us would call, comfort food. Now, before getting into this is something I wanted to talk about today. It's something I've been relying on a little bit recently, if I'm being perfectly candid. Something I've felt a lot of cravings for and something I've needed. And it kind of got me thinking about what it is, what it means to people, why we call it that, and how we kind of define it. Um, and without wanting to be too much of a lawyer about it, I kind of think that we seem to culturally divide comfort food in 2 different ways. One centers on perhaps what is a slightly more negative definition, I would say, which, is any food that triggers a kind of pleasurable psychological response due to its actual chemical makeup. On the one hand, some foods or some ingredients contain components that can potentially trigger like actual emotional responses, like relaxing or mood enhancing responses in the brain. For example, dark chocolate or red wine have kind of well documented mental effects, even if very short term. Or as another kind of more common example that many of us have probably either heard of or actually experienced, there are foodstuffs and dishes and products that intentionally combine or have been designed specifically to create the combination of the ideal components for something that we just can't stop eating, basically. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're ideal for kind of human satiation. It's not that it's something that satisfies our hunger or levels us out nicely in terms of energy, just that we physically feel good when we eat them and that we find it really hard to stop eating them once we start. Think of, for example, fresh, hot, salty chips or a homemade cheesecake. It's that kind of ideal combination of fat and carbohydrates that our ever energy hungry bodies just desire and need, even if we aren't hungry. But the other kind of definition of comfort food, which is further away from what I would say is a slightly more negative or slightly more stigmatized definition, is more related to kind of the sentimental or emotional attachment that we have to certain foods. I'd say it's really difficult to describe a dish you just tried for the first time as comfort food, for example. You wouldn't take one mouthful and say, oh, this is comfort food immediately. It's something you could maybe imagine becoming a comfort food, or it's something that someone would describe to you when trying it for the first time as comfort food. But, you know, it's kind of, it's something deeper than that. Instead, it's likely to be a particular thing or a plate or even just an ingredient or a smell that transports us to another time or place or period where we feel at ease and perhaps obviously comforted. It might be your favorite childhood chocolate bar, the kind of the typical McDonald's order or fast food order that you had when you were a student, your mom's cooking, your best friend's favorite crisps. Some people may have a few comfort foods in common if they come from similar walks of life or a similar country or a similar part of a country. But something beautiful about this kind of categorization is that no two people will have exactly the same tastes or nostalgia for these foods, which even though we can call the specifically combined component type of comfort food, like your Pringles that you just can't stop eating, versus the more sentimental definition, there's no way you can just create a comfort food. I don't think there's no specific way you can make someone feel something when they're eating, because no two people will feel or taste it the same way. I mean, and even though that is a beautiful thing, as someone who has taken a very long time to develop a healthy and balanced relationship with food, I think comfort food is fabulous. I think the fact that the human body can feel so much just from sustaining itself is a beautiful, beautiful thing. But there is also a negative stigma still attached to something so bloody delightful. I imagine it's likely you've heard comfort food used as a compliment towards a certain foodstuff or a dish, but I imagine it's also just as likely you've heard it used with something negative or almost derogatory attached. For example, it may be used as a phrase in marketing, trying to appeal to nostalgia or sentiment for the sole purpose of selling a particular product or ingredient. Otherwise, you may hear someone refer to particularly heavy or calorie dense meals as comfort food, quote unquote, in a way to try and justify eating it, either to themselves or to the people around them too. And as a result, it can become a term that people use with a certain amount of guilt attached, if you will. They'll find themselves referring to a bag of chips as comfort food, but never a piece of fruit, whereas both can and should be something that can be just as comforting as the other. So, today I want to talk about our favorite comfort foods, however we like to define them, to shine a bit of a positive light back on them and to try and help remove, even just if possible, for a couple of you guys listening, some of that kind of nasty negative stigma that can be attached. And also, hopefully, perhaps we can help each other discover some new future comfort food ideas. I asked you guys on Instagram to let me know some of your favorite comfort foods from wherever you are in the world, from whatever it is that makes you feel comfortable when eating them or makes you feel comforted, rather. And then I want to talk about my own kind of personal favorite comfort foods too, just for a little soft, easy listening chat about things that taste and feel nice. Beginning with Instagram, first of all, as always, I have to say thank you so much for the amazing response to the question I put out asking for your favorite comfort foods. Some of the responses overlapped. In fact, a lot of the responses overlapped, which I really liked. Because, as I said, obviously, no two favorites will ever be the same, but seeing that some people get a similar feeling from similar foods is really nice. The first one, and this, let's just not take this one particularly seriously, even though I think many of us can relate to it. Someone just, in fact, a couple of people just responded with nothing more than alcohol. Whether it's wine, beer, vodka, something you can't even taste because it's hidden so well in a cocktail, who knows? But it all has the same effect after about 30 minutes. Chocolate was a big, big, big hitter, and it's completely understandable as to why that would be in there. While, it is one of those things you could say is a bit more designed to be a comfort food, I think this one carries just as much sentimental value in terms of what we ate as a child or something that reminds us of family or of friends or of nice times. For a similar reason, ice cream was said by a lot of people, whether it's, store bought, whether it's gelato, whether it's anything. I think it's something that, though again, obviously delicious, even when it's bad, it's never really bad. It's something that always carries nice kind of memories with it of hot weather, of, you know, dinner with family or going out to buy one with a friend or with a partner, something like that. Um, so those were three that overlapped quite a lot. A very specific and lovely British example that someone gave as a comfort food were bourbon biscuits, or bourbon, however you like to pronounce them. I've never met anyone who has a general consensus on the correct pronunciation. But those little chocolate sandwich biscuits are definitely a big hitter on the comfort food front. Though I'm a bit more of a custard cream girl myself, a bourbon biscuit is, you know, it's a top it's a top 10 biscuit, absolutely. Someone said that the Croatian cheese pastry burek was something very comforting for them, whether they have, just Croatian family or whether they're, in Croatia themselves. I've never tasted it, but I am aware of what it is, and I can totally understand how that would be just a cuddle for your soul, basically. Similarly, someone said spanakopita, which is a Greek feta-based pie with spinach in there and phyllo pastry, absolutely delicious. And that was someone's comfort food. Someone else said their grandma's pancakes was a specifically comforting one. I don't know whether that's sweet or savory, but I can imagine that that's something that both physically and mentally is just adorable. Lots of people, and I include myself in here, lots of people, most likely many from Scotland or the UK in general, slid into the DMs saying that porridge was one of their number one comfort foods, mostly with very specific toppings, whether it was peanut butter or Nutella or honey or fruit or cinnamon. But porridge was a big hitter for a lot of people, and I perfectly understand why. Not so much in the summer, but in the autumn and in the winter, it's just one of the best ways to start your day. Someone said coffee or anything coffee flavored, which again I get. Coffee, I think the smell as well as the taste and the concept of the drink itself is a big thing for a lot of people. For example, the smell of coffee always reminds me of my dad, which I find something very comforting. A lot of crossover was found with fries or chips, also salted crisps, salted nuts, anything that can just be easily, from bowl or from bag to mouth. Um, Tomatoes with mozzarella in the summer, quite a few people said. Italians and Brits alike was a big favourite, which I get. Mozzarella, the first time I tasted a proper one with like tomatoes that were in season, I felt like I'd been robbed of something for over 2 decades. One person came in and just said a well-made sandwich. Nothing specific, nothing kind of, no specific combination of fillings or ingredients, just a well-made sandwich. And I relate to that one so viscerally. I'm such a sandwich fan. From the cheapest to the fanciest, I think it's a perfect food stuff. Someone said bread dunked in olive oil and salt. Again, absolutely understandable. We had a lot of crossover with pizza, people with specific pizza kinds that made them comforted. Other people just had pizza full stop. Now, whether that's the super cheese and topping laden American style or the classic light and delicious summery Italian style, to me, it's just as comforting and it's absolutely deserving of being named a comfort food. I think a lot of people would relate that to childhood or to, holidays and vacations abroad, or, you know, the occasional treat of a takeaway, maybe from their student days. It's such a universally lovable food. In terms of pasta, again, we had lots of crossover. Some specific ones that came up a lot were pasta with kind of cream and bacon, or more specifically, a carbonara of some kind. Cacio e pepe came up a few times. Um, any kind of pasta and tomato sauce, like spaghetti al pomodoro, someone said more specifically. Also, polenta for my northern Italians came up a few times, which I totally get because polenta is something you can just eat fistfuls of. A few other Italians mentioned minestrina, and specifically their grandma or their nonna's minestrina. I think it's something mostly eaten either in the winter or if you're not feeling well, so you can understand how that, with the sentimental attachment to a family member, could be really, really powerful in terms of being comforting. From other parts of the world, we had someone say that kimchi stew with rice was really comforting. Also, sudado de pollo, a Colombian chicken stew. Eggs in purgatory, or shakshuka, for example, which I've only ever had once, but I completely understand the hype for. Lots of other people said dishes with steamed rice, or just stuff on steamed rice, was a common theme. One that had me specifically salivating, which, and this is funny because it isn't necessarily something I would define as comfort food, but this is exactly my point. But someone very specifically said eggs fried in chili oil, sesame seeds, grated garlic, and soy sauce with steamed rice. That is just literally mouth-watering. So thank you to who sent that in. Similarly, noodle soup, ramen came in a few times, and I completely agree with that one. I find it very, 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 very difficult to see past ramen, even if I'm in a Japanese or a kind of pan Asian place that has lots of other different kinds of Asian foods or Japanese foodstuffs. When I see ramen, I feel like it's like a magnet. I absolutely love it. Soup is already a big thing for me because it's a big part of Scottish culture. Um, but it just feels like the most luxurious version of comfort available. It's wonderful. Um, Brownies came up a lot. Lots of kind of dessert based ones are coming in hot now. A couple of people said specifically a hot or a warm brownie eaten with ice cream. Particularly not my favorite way to eat a brownie. I like them straight from the fridge or at room temperature. But of course, a brownie and ice cream is classic. Someone said pistachio cream croissants, and obviously, you know who you are, and you clearly know who I am because it's also one of my favorite things to eat in the entire universe. Um, a few people said cookies. Someone said specifically their boyfriend's mom's cookies. Shout out to your boyfriend's mom. If she has a recipe, do let me know because the fact that that specifically could be your comfort food is very intriguing. Cookies are a big one though. I can understand. I'd be surprised by anyone who said that cookies weren't a kind of comfort food for them. Some very specific examples came from Victoria Sponge. A few people said scones, and this is one probably because it's been a very long time since I last had a scone. They aren't a thing here in Italy, and I've only made them once since moving here. I really need to make some again. But my god, yes, scone. That is such a good example of that. A lot of people just said toast. Toast with various toppings, absolute classic. Toast and butter, it's one of those things that you won't have for 6 months, and then when you do have it, you have to eat 8 slices at once. Lots of people said mac and cheese. Lots of people said grilled cheese sandwiches or grilled ham and cheese sandwiches or toasties. Lots then paired it with tomato soup. Someone even said they love a ham and cheese sandwich with strawberry jam, which I guess isn't actually that weird in terms of balancing the taste out. Guess it's not really any different to having like chutney or something on it, or honey. Ham and cheese toasted sandwich with honey on it is glorious. Strawberry jam's quite specific though, I love that. Someone said again very specifically grocery store chocolate cake with sugary American buttercream frosting, and I understand that very deeply. Some slightly more unusual ones. For example, someone said tuna sashimi, like just the fish, just raw slices of tuna. While that's delicious, it's unusual to see that as a comfort food, I guess, but I guess if it's something that makes you feel good, I'm very happy for you. Someone said frozen blueberries. I love the thought of just eating those straight from the freezer. Someone said for a similar reason, grapes, like just in the sense that you can keep eating them and that they're refreshing and lovely. Someone said salty licorice. I'm guessing there has to be some Scandi heritage in there. If not, I'm concerned. A lot of people said eggs in various forms, omelets, scrambled eggs, fried eggs, boiled eggs, everything. Again, totally understandable. That's such a growing up, that's such a like a childhood nostalgia type thing. And also because they're so easy to make, I think that in itself is comforting in a way. A couple of people said baked potatoes, which, yes, again, I have not had any since moving to Italy. Obviously, the climate isn't really one as conducive to a baked tatty as it is back home. But like a baked potato with beans and cheese, or like a really good trashy cheap tuna mayo, hell yeah. And a couple of people with some very specific cheese and fruit combinations, like the ham and cheese toasted sandwich from earlier. Someone said brie and peaches together, which is an iconic and underrated pairing, whether it's just on their own, in a salad, on a sandwich, excellent. And someone else, though to me this sounds like a bodybuilder meal. Someone said one of their comfort foods is melon with cottage cheese. I get how that could be a good combination, the kind of creamy with the watery and the sweet with the slightly tangy, but definitely not what I expected to see coming. So thank you for sharing all of those. Some of them raised some eyebrows, but some of them are definitely things I would follow you into eating if invited. And just to throw in a couple of my own, of which again there was some obvious overlap. Chocolate is one of my biggest ones. It's so accessible, it's so easy, any time of day, any kind of chocolate. It makes me feel better, from the cheapest, trashiest, sugariest white chocolate to the really, really luxurious or, lovingly made craft dark chocolate. Just, I love it all. Cheese, again, I couldn't finish this episode without talking about cheese, so I'm glad so many other people did. But again, any time of day, before a meal, during a meal, after a meal, blue, soft, aged, crunchy, basically any kind, I'll taste at least once, and it's always comforting. Bread is another big one for me. I could eat it plain and dry on its own. The smell makes me absolutely feral. Whether it's homemade, whether it's store bought, anything. It's a perfect vehicle for almost everything, and I love it to death. Close to bread, because to me it doesn't exist without some kind of bread on the side, is soup. Whether it's my granny's lentil soup, which always makes me think of Christmas or makes me think of my childhood, to even tinned tomato soup, which again has like a comforting, nostalgic, sentimental thing, even to my own homemade soups, which are often just made up of a cooked and blended and seasoned array of things that I've found going slightly soft at the bottom of the fridge. It's such a good, affordable, cozy, and satisfying food. I'm just such a fan. Slightly more out of left field is bananas. If you've ever seen any of my What I Eat in a Day videos, you might already have gathered this one. I love a banana. It's the most filling of fruits. It's portable, it's sweet, it's delicious. You can bake with them very easily, and they're just, I love them basically. Macaroni cheese is a big one for me. Again, mostly a kind of sentimental, nostalgic thing. And just because it uses up cheese, which is always and obviously going to be one of my comfort foods. But it makes me think of my family's cooking, or big shared dinners, because you very rarely make a small kind of portion of macaroni cheese, and just how much it fills you up and how strongly and wonderfully flavored it is. And it's so good. It's so good. And a similar one for both emotional and actual joyous, flavorful reasoning, apple crumble with custard is the one that I had to round off here with, because a good apple crumble with soft, slightly tangy, but also sweetened apples and a cinnamon spiked buttery crumble, maybe with some oats or some nuts in there, maybe just a basic 3 ingredient crumble, a bit of brown sugar, and then served just absolutely dangerously piping hot with some vanilla custard over the top. I could eat that for every single meal for the rest of my life and I'd be very, very happy. It's so balanced in terms of tastes and textures, and it's just glorious. I genuinely have yet to find, there are things that are delicious. There are fancy pasticerias and patisseries out there making some of the most mind blowing desserts anyone will ever lay their eyes or their tongues upon. And yet it would do very well, very, very well, in my opinion, to compete with a good, kind of rustic and ugly looking apple crumble with custard. I swear. I feel loved and cuddled just thinking about it. And that's about it. That's when I want to round off today's episode. Just a soft, easy peasy one this month. I wanted to, like I said, I've been thinking about and eating a lot of comfort foods recently, and it's just one of those points of life. And I'm so grateful to you all for sharing them. It's been nice to kind of talk about the differences, and I'd be interested to hear what you think about in terms of, the definition and any of the kind of less positive stigma attached to comfort food as a subject. I am now incredibly ready to eat something and definitely want to try out some of these combinations that I haven't already, and some of these dishes I'd never even heard of before until today. So thank you guys so much as always. I hope you found this one either just comforting or hunger inducing or inspiring, however you feel. I'm very glad. It's been a delight as always. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget, if you're looking for any kind of recipes or other food related video content or written content, you can find it on maverickbaking.com or on Maverick Baking on YouTube if you're not already there. But that's it. That's where I'm going to round off for today. Thank you guys as always, and I will see you for the next one.